Heidi-ho, neighbors! Welcome to another nightly Q&A where me, Mr. Wilson, attempts to answer your questions to the best of my ability. Tonight's first question comes from our neighbor Lace, who asks, should I mention a coworker working on a personal project to my manager? In short, this coworker is working on a short story / novel during his downtime at work. His writing is definitely for profit, not related to the job at hand, programming, and he's a hired consultant with what I imagine to be a substantial billing rate. Under more typical circumstances, I would never bring this up, as I believe everyone should be free to take a moment throughout the day to let their mind relax. Additionally, our team is very comfortable and open, and I can't imagine someone being disciplined for taking a moment to read the news or pay a bill online. It might be a case of sour grapes for me, and I'd like to work on personal projects myself, but don't mix them with work because I think it's unprofessional on top of being harmful to both me and my employer. Should I mention my concerns to my manager or keep them to myself and not stir the pot? This is an excellent question. But the first thing that comes to mind really with this is, it sounds like this really isn't your place to get involved. It doesn't sound like you're this guy's boss, and his work ethic really isn't your responsibility. I think you're adding difficulty in your life where you currently don't have any. This problem, it really lies on your manager, and it's his responsibility to solve and investigate it. And it's not a weight you really need to take on. Yeah, I'm reminded of Steve Maraboli when he says, the greatest step toward a life of simplicity is to learn to let go. However, if you do feel really strongly about this, you should speak to the person you have the problem with instead of reaching out to the manager. I think a lot of times, we try to solve problems and step in areas where we don't need to be, and it causes a lot of needless anxiety and frustration in areas where we don't have to take that on. And ultimately, you can just kind of let that go and let your manager carry that weight. I would say that, if for some reason you did feel strongly and you decide to go to him, you can, even if you want to be passive about it, you could even say something like, hey, I wouldn't want to be caught by the boss doing that. I also want to mention that it's totally possible that this individual isn't actually logging this time. If they have a billing rate and they're a contractor, it's totally possible that, he doesn't log the time that he's not, working. And I think it's always best to try to, think the best about people when possible. And, maybe give this guy the benefit of the doubt or lady. And, hopefully, your manager, if there is something unethical going on, hopefully your manager can step in and really kind of fill that gap. But I would say ultimately don't go to your manager. It could force management to have to instill practices that could destroy the very relaxed environment that you currently work in. They could start forcing you guys to have to log every hour and show everything and no breaks and all kinds of other things to really kind of nail down on this guy, and that could cut across the whole board to everybody. So ultimately, I think really I would let it go if you can, and if you can't, confront the person individually and really let them know what you think. Or if you're too passive to kind of to confront the person fully, maybe just make a mention of you would not feel comfortable doing that, or you would be worried if the boss saw you doing that, and that may give him enough of a hint to to kind of not do that during company time. Our second question comes from our neighbor Nelson, who asks, now in practice, how can I hire more diversely? Let's say that I've attended all the talks and I've read all the research and I've concluded that what's best for my team and my company is to increase the amount of diversity in my software engineering team. So I already want to hire more people of color, more women, etc. The frustration I've had, especially on small teams in the Midwest, is how to actually do that. Let's say a typical round of interviews is I've talked to 10 candidates, 8 of them are white men, 1 is a white woman, and 1 is a black woman. And let's assume they are all reasonably good in the interview. It seems like as a member of the interview loop, I have the following choices available to me. I can tell my boss truthfully, we have no people of color and no women on our team currently. This is the best person to hire based just solely on gender and race. Or I can tell my boss truthfully, this candidate, who by happenstance is a black woman, also did the absolute best in the interview. Or I can tell my boss and lie, this candidate, who by happenstance is a black woman, did the absolute best in the interview, which is clearly unethical. Is my dilemma a real thing, or am I just making stuff up here? I'm not sure option 1 is even legal, let alone good HR practice. Option 2 is ideal, but by definition, if 90% of your candidates are white guys, then by just statistics, the best in the interview being non-white, the chances are around 10%, and that's before you account for the unconscious bias of an all-white, all-male interview panel. Option 3 is a path towards the goal of a more diverse team, but isn't a viable option because it's so unethical. Well, Nelson, this is a really tricky situation. And though I believe this comes from a really great place, I do want to emphasize that this is a dangerous ground to be on. In the US at least, it's illegal to discriminate against someone, an applicant or an employee, because of that person's race, color, religion, sex. That includes gender identity, sexual orientation, pregnancy, and also their national origin, their age, disability, or even genetic information. The EEOC.gov website has the prohibited employment and policy practices that you may want to read. But this ultimately means that you have to treat all candidates fairly. However, I will say that since you're a hiring manager, or at least that's what it sounds like, you can gauge the success in an interview in different ways that may allow individuals with various backgrounds to bring diversity to your group. However, this may not mean you get people from any different races or sex than you currently have, but you would be able to hire different backgrounds, and it would mean offering people a chance to, who didn't go down the standard path to, have a chance at a software engineering career. This could lead to people of different color and people of different sex to get an opportunity, but it doesn't guarantee it. For example, you could put in the job description that you're looking for a candidate who brings, these ideas that are outside of the box and don't follow the typical university response. You can also ask coding questions that are not the standard university application questions of optimization or using recursion. You could try to find some out-of-the-box sort of ideas and questions that really, kind of stump the standard university people, but maybe someone thinking on their feet could solve. I hope this helps and you're able to accomplish your goals for your team. Because I know this can be a frustrating place when you're trying to really kind of diversify a team. But remember, diversity doesn't have to mean you hire someone of another ethnicity or sex, though that can totally be a great way to add diversity. But instead, I think you should think of it the way Malcolm Forbes says it, when he said, diversity is the art of thinking independently together. Well, our third question comes from our neighbor Keenan, who asks, I'm writing a book where there are fairies, and I'm looking for battle tactics they could use. My fairies are hunted for food by basically anything that'll eat bugs, mice, and small birds. Humans also target them because wild fairies are seen as a nuisance, and a tasty nuisance at that. How can they fight off all of these creatures? magic is very limited, and their magic is too weak to make a difference. Anyway, their tech level is very primitive, and their intelligence is close to that of a human's. However, they have weak memory. They're also rather weak, however strong for their size, and have the endurance of a hummingbird. They can fly, but not very long, and they can fly pretty high. One strain, which lives in the forest, is about 4 inches tall on average, and another that lives in a desert is about 2.5 inches tall on average. Well, I would say, Keenan, that maybe you could look into various bugs and animals in like rainforest atmospheres and various bugs and animals that currently exist on Earth, and see how they protect themselves in the wild. Ultimately what I would say is, because this is a book, I would find the most entertaining and most exciting versions of those. But ultimately, you could use something like, for instance, they wear bright colors to make enemies think they're poisonous, or maybe they work in groups against a target, like a bee in a hive. Because it's a book, it's fantastic, because you can take those the next step further. You could say that when fairies die, they explode, and this causes chaos and damage to everything around it except other fairies. You could say that's because the amount of magic, though it's small, is pent up in such a tiny space, and so this is one of the reasons that they combust upon being killed. Other options that you could go with too is that they, have some sort of venom that they do actually hold, like a bee sting or something like that, that really kind of, allows them to defend themselves better on the ground. But I would say your book sounds like it's going to be a very interesting one, and I'd love to know more about what it's called when it's done. Thanks again for the question. Well, our last question for tonight comes from our neighbor, Something Shiny, who asks, our child refuses to be wrong. Depending on the context, a somewhat to extremely annoying habit in my oldest child, 9 years old, is that he refuses to accept that he is wrong about something. For certain situations, our wife and I's reaction is usually an internal roll of the eyes and a move on. But for others, we want to pull our hair out. Some examples. This is a somewhat annoying thing that happened yesterday. Me. Your shirt is on backwards. Him. Oh, I know. Me. You should fix it. Him. Nah, I prefer it like this, when he clearly does not prefer it like that. This is a mildly infuriating one that happens. Him. In the car on a road we've driven down many times. Wow, we've never driven down this road before. My wife. No, we've driven down this road many times before. We drove down it last week when we went from X to do Y. Him. No, I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've ever ridden down this road. This is the rage-inducing ones. Me. You have practice tomorrow. Make sure all your stuff is ready. Him. Standing next to a calendar that shows practice tomorrow, distributed weeks ago. I'm pretty sure I don't have practice tomorrow. Me. Nope, right there, bud, on the calendar. Him. Did that just get added? I'm pretty sure I don't have practice tomorrow. Why? Just why? Should I address it? Is this punishable? It would feel really weird to punish for it. My calm, mature adult reaction is not to argue, even though internally I'm screaming. I simply state the facts, tell him to stop arguing, and then he gets all muttery and sour and we move on. Oh man, this is a frustrating place to be as a parent, for sure. I know that this is coming from a heart of concern for his future, and we've all met those people who just don't know how to admit when they're wrong, right? But I think that if that is what you're worried about, it's highly unlikely he will grow into that as he moves forward. I think, maybe a good solution for now is in this sort of situation, it would be a good chance for you to offer him an alternative, like give him an out to the situation. For example, next time he blatantly disagrees with a fact, offer him a response that, he can use. Like, oh, I didn't think that I had been on that road before, or, oh, I don't remember seeing this on the calendar before. Also, another helpful thing you could do for him is, at times, when he is correct, you should really emphasize him being correct and give him, a lot of praise for saying the correct thing or being correct or, right about something. Or also too, anytime that you catch yourself in something where you've been incorrect, make sure that you're going out of your way to apologize and make it clear that, oh, it was your mistake and you made a mistake. It's not necessarily what's happening in this case, but sometimes if someone feels like they're wrong all the time, then they'll refuse being wrong ever. But also, it's totally possible that if he feels his parents are never wrong, he may also never want to be wrong. It doesn't sound like there's anything necessarily wrong going on with your family or anything like that. I think he's just being a 9-year-old. But with that said, you can always offer outs and opportunities to, teach him during this time. I wouldn't say punish him. I would say just teach him. Give him outs, give him explanations of things he could say, and then also, too, highlight the good times and make sure that you highlight your times that you're wrong. A lot of times when you see that someone in authority is willing to admit when they're wrong, it allows you to feel more safe to start admitting that you yourself are wrong. And so, what I would say is that, if you can highlight those two things, when he's right and when you're wrong, and then give him some outs when he does make those choices, I think you're going to see a really big turnaround in his attitude. And, it's really going to kind of help strengthen your relationship with him and moving forward. You don't want him to ever hide anything or lie about a bunch of stuff because he thinks that it's the, best solution. And so, that might really help strengthen that relationship with him on top of that. So, I wish you all the best there. Anyways, this is closing time. I just wanted to thank everybody again for your time listening in. Please, if you have any thoughts about what I've said, any counter arguments or any continuation on what I've said, or you just agree, please, drop down here in the comments and put your comments in. Also, I love the questions. Any questions you can think of, anything that you kind of want to pose to me, feel free to put those down in the comments as well. I'd love to pick some of those up for next week. Ultimately, for me here, my hope is that I can be a help to neighbors and that I can, share as much wisdom as possible, as much as I can, to individuals, and I hope, the best for everyone. Ultimately, if you can, please don't forget to like the video. That really helps out the channel a lot, and that's going to really help, the YouTube powers that are to kind of prioritize this video and let it kind of get out there and be seen. Hopefully it can help a lot of people, and we can bring people more into this neighborhood family that we have. I just want to thank you guys again, and I want to say good night.